Then we get into this, what we call early dating phase. This is the first couple dates. Again, we're usually not exclusive with each other. We're maybe still dating around, right? So I've maybe gone on a couple dates with you. Outward attraction still dominates, but the shift in outward starts to more heavily emphasize the cultural and personal preferences. So in other words, someone who you considered quote-unquote hot made you want to date them the first time, but once you're on that date, you're focusing oftentimes much more on the cultural and personal preferences, the personality pieces. Again, still kind of outward stuff, the stuff that you can see, but it's more about personal preference, right? Cultural aspects of that. And you're starting to try to penetrate into in other words, what are you trying to do? One of the things you're trying to do in early dating situations is you're trying to figure out if you're inwardly attracted to that person. You're trying to take a peek behind the curtain and figure out if you're biologically, culturally, or personally attracted to what's below the surface, inward, right? That's why we ask questions about, tell me about your job and tell me about your family, right? You're really looking for any kind of crack or red flag that will tell you, I'm not going to be attracted to that person, or I am going to be attracted to that person. You come home, and like I said, you're thinking to yourself, maybe talking to your friends and family about if you are attracted to that person based on this combination. Now, once you get into committed dating, like I said, this is usually 1 to 2 months, at least in most Latter-day Saint kind of relationship trajectories. You start to get this equity between inward and outward attraction. The outward attraction is still there, it's still important. In fact, oftentimes, even when we're committed to each other after a couple months of dating, if I do find myself not outwardly attracted to you anymore, I will break up. Most people will do that at that point in the relationship. But now, it's not just about the outward attraction. There is that inward attraction piece that's important to me too. I'm more attracted to your personality. I see you play with kids. That's attractive. I'm seeing more about your church calling, the spiritual attraction that we talked about. That is starting to be just as important to me as the outward piece in this committed dating phase. And then we move towards engagement in early marriage, and this is where we start to see the pendulum shift the other way. In fact, for many people, it is around the time of engagement where they're starting to make a judgment call about inward attraction. Am I going to be attracted to you for the rest of my life, for the rest of eternity? Oftentimes based on, again, inward attraction, which is based on culture and personal preference. Based on what my culture is telling me. For a lot of LDS singles, again, that's what is the church telling me I should look for in you, and what are my personal preferences about what is attractive on the inside. That's what really starts to dominate in that engagement phase through early marriage. And then long term, in a long-term relationship, it starts to shift completely to inward. And one of the interesting things that happens, that we're not going to talk about today because we're focused more on the dating side, but one of the interesting things that happens with attraction in long-term marriages is it focuses on the inward, but it starts to really focus in on the P, the personal. But the really fascinating thing that happens is that personal attraction actually starts to shift. And what happens is that the longer you're dating someone or married to someone, and the more and longer you stay committed to that person, you actually start to shift your personal attractiveness to whatever that person does. You start to find all their weird tics and things that you thought were maybe even annoying when you were dating is attractive to them. It's a process we call idealization in marriage, and it's something that's connected to healthy marital relationships and long-term success in marriage, is that you look at the things about your spouse that everyone else would probably look at and think that's really weird, and you are actually attracted to those. Not because you used to when you were dating, because you actually shifted your personal attraction a little bit because of that commitment. And so this is kind of the standard process that we see a lot of people go through. Now, 2 more things I want to add on to it, and then we'll kind of wrap up with some keys and some more kind of take-home messages. There's 2 other just theories about why people end up together when it comes to attraction I want to kind of throw out there, and then I'll tie it together with a couple things. One of the other things out there in the research is what's called the matching hypothesis of attraction. And the matching hypothesis of attraction is basically a 2-step process we think happens in conjunction with all these other things we've discussed, which is step 1, all of you, whether you're aware of it or not, now you have a lot more information about how this happens, but you have or do a self-assessment of yourself in terms of how attractive you think you are in the dating market. In other words, you have a sense of how biological and culturally attractive you are to other people, and you do your own self-assessment, right? All of you have your number between 1 and 10, and I won't ask you to share what you think it is, but you have that number. I'm a 5, I'm a 7, I'm a 3, whatever it is. That's step 1. Step 2 of this matching hypothesis is that when you go out into the marriage market and you start to date, your initial matching and attractiveness is based on matching that number. In other words, if I think I'm a 5, I actually will find myself attracted to other 5s. If I'm a 7, I find myself attracted to other 7s. And the reason we think that happens is all about the cultural attractiveness. And we think it's all about social desirability. That we know, and there's research out there that supports this, that when you see one of those mismatched couples, when you see a 9 dating or married to a 2 or 3, you get that icky feeling. Like there's something wrong. You start to actually think there's something going on in that relationship. Right? Someone's a gold digger or something, someone's got blackmail evidence, something is going on. And people know that. They understand that. And so they think if I'm a 5, it's safer for me to date 5s and 6s and 4s. I don't want the 2s and 3s, but if I date at 8, 9, or 10, it's going to make my relationship harder. And we actually see people do this on the dating market, is they tend to match based on this social desirability. A couple other pieces of research that are interesting around this. Those that are rated as the most physically attractive by independent raters also rate themselves as more attractive on the dating market. And the reason I throw that up is that one of the things research tells us is that we're actually pretty accurate in what our number is. Interestingly enough, people are pretty good assessors of how culturally attractive they are because, again, you know what the cultural messages are. You know what you are supposed to look like. You know what the culture tells you. So most people are pretty good at that. This actually, though, messes up men more than women, which is another interesting research piece. Men that think they're highly attractive tend to get choosy, which my very last slide is going to talk about this is a big issue. And by choosy, what we mean is just what it sounds like, is they tend to get really picky, and they tend to float relationship to relationship. And one of the interesting things we find is that the most attractive men are not the most likely to get married. They're some of the least likely to get married because they tend to get really, really choosy. But this is one of the things we think is operating here, is that people tend to match based on their perceived hypothesis or perceived attractiveness level. Another piece, again, I'm going to come back to what you can do with this, but one other last piece I want to get out there is another theory of attraction and matching, which is called the filter theory. Filter theory is another theory out there that helps us try to understand why certain people end up with certain people. Again, matching hypothesis is one of these, filter theory is another of them. And the filter theory works like this. It's got this nice visual of a filter where you start with all the potential dating partners in the world, right? So if you kind of imagine every potential single person on the planet or even married person on the planet, you could date any of them, right? Filter theory says that you go through these different filters when you find people that you're attracted to. And the first filter that you put on is what's called propinquity, which simply means who do you have access to? Right, so basically this idea is that, well, I can only be attractive to people that I have contact with. There might be this perfect soulmate for me somewhere out in the middle of Africa that I've got no contact with, so I'm not going to be attracted to them. So who am I close with? Now, the interesting thing is that this bubble has gotten a lot bigger in the last 20 years because of technology and the internet. Right? So it used to be basically this was like my ward and my stake maybe, and people my mom knew. Now it's a much greater, much bigger group of bubble or of people that I have access to. That's the first filter. The second filter is this attractiveness stuff that we've been talking about. And in this, attractiveness is the word used. If you're taking notes, you can put outward attraction. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to filter people based on who do I find physically, outwardly attractive. Again, based on biology, culture, and personal preference. That's going to be my next filter. I'm only going to talk to people I at least find somewhat physically attractive. Okay, we've kind of already talked about that. But what happens next? Again, if you want to mirror this onto what I've been talking about, this is now we're in that first, second, third date phase. Now it's social background. Now I'm going to be attracted to people that have a similar social background to us. Oftentimes, again, this is kind of another way of saying that cultural attractiveness, that if I'm a single member of the church, I'm going to be attracted to people that are also members of the church, that have a similar, right? If my parents were married, I'm attracted to people that have married parents, that have a similar socioeconomic background as me. That's another thing that I'm going to start to filter people because it's going to change how attractive I am. Again, now starting to get into that internal attraction a little bit. The next filter, this theory argues, is what's called complementary attraction. So you notice I haven't talked at all about opposites attract. in this entire discussion so far, seminar. This is the only thing in the research that talks a little bit about that. This is the idea that once I get past physical attraction and inward attraction in terms of matching social background, I do then start to be attracted to people that complement me in terms of personality. If I'm an extrovert, I'm kind of attracted to introverts and vice versa. You do see that pop up a little bit in the research once these other things are into play. So sometimes we think opposite attract and we think, okay, I'm a practicing Mormon, I'm going to go find some atheist with tattoos and piercings and all these things. That doesn't happen. What does happen is once we're a similar social background, then I might be attracted to someone that complements me, right? So there's a difference between opposite and complements. That's kind of what this theory argues. And then, right, so I find someone that's by me, I find them physically attractive, we have similar social backgrounds, it's that matching piece, they complement me with their personality. The last filter is what's called commitment readiness, which means, do they actually choose me or not? One of the aspects of dating relationships that make them the most unique relationships of your life is their relationships of choice. None of your other relationships are like that, right? You might never talk to your mom, never talk to your sibling, but they're still your mom and they're still your brother. You can't get away from that. Those are what we call fixed relationships. Romantic relationships are relationships of choice, which means I have to choose you and you have to choose me. And so the last thing that makes me attracted to you is that you actually want to be in a relationship with me. That's great. That makes me more attracted to you, right? It's tied to all of those things oftentimes. And so this filter theory says we kind of filter through people based on these different levels of attraction. So again, a lot more information. So what? Okay, so adding on to what we talked about before, there's kind of 3 more takeaways that we can get from this added information. First, part of what these other theories are telling us is that if you want to catch attractive partners, you need to be attractive partners. Right? One of the things that's important about this seminar is it'd be really easy for me to stand up and say, everyone's attractive, do your own thing, be your own person. Again, none of the research really supports that with attraction. If you want to attract attractive people, be an attractive person, particularly when it comes to culture and personal traits. Again, identifying what does the culture around me say is attractive and do it. Figuring out what I find personally attractive or what I want in another person and trying to emulate or emphasize those traits in myself. 2, and this goes into some of the more recent stuff I was talking about, both of the matching in the filter theory, it also tells me that one of the only ways I can be attracted to other people is I have to put myself in situations where attraction matters. That attraction catalyst that I've been talking about only matters if I'm in a situation where someone of the opposite sex that's single can come up to me and talk. And this is actually a really big issue with a lot of Latter-day Saint singles. Is that outside of church activities, where do I spend my time? Well, a lot of us spend a lot of time at work or at school. And then I've got to exercise because everyone tells me I have to do that. I want my personal time. I've got hobbies. I've got to binge watch that show on Netflix. And I don't put myself in a lot of situations where someone could be attracted to me. And that's really important, right? I have to go to those church activities. I have to be out in public, maybe more often than I would like, if I want to put myself in situations, right? In other words, one doesn't matter if nobody sees me. So if I'm going to put myself in positions and be culturally attractive, I have to be in situations with other singles. And then third is that I have to understand that attraction is not universal. Again, I said that earlier, I want to come back to it. You're never going to be attractive to all people. It's impossible. You shouldn't want to be. But who do you want to be attractive to is the most important question. What kind of person do I want to attract? And how can I use the information we're talking about to attract that particular type of person? Right? In other words, I would love a 6 who's active in the church and dresses this way and loves kids. Right? Whatever that combination is for us, for me, where are they? And how can I hang out around them more so that that catalyst can happen for them? Those are the people that are most successful in the dating market, is that understand this piece and put themselves in those positions. And then understand that, you know what, I don't care that much about the 6-foot blonde 9 that just wants to do a career and doesn't want a family. I don't care about them. So why am I spending so much time worrying about if they like me or not? That's also an important mentality for a lot of singles to understand. Okay, one quick note on gender. I haven't talked a lot about gender differences, but there is some research out there. Probably the biggest consistent thing we see is that men tend to have a much more standardized version of attraction than women. In other words, if you want to put this in what we've been talking about, men do tend to be more influenced by the B and the C than the P. Women tend to be more emphasized or put more emphasis on personal preference. And we actually see this again in the lab where if men come in and they're shown those faces, they're shown a picture of a woman, if one man rates a woman as an 8 or 9, pretty much every guy that comes into the lab is going to say that's an 8 or 9. If a woman comes in and says that guy is a 9, next woman comes in and could say he's a 2 or a 3. See a lot more variation with women. Again, that's important because it tells me that as a woman, I probably need to understand that men have a more universal standard. For men, that helps me understand that women are going to vary a lot. That if I want to attract one woman, it's very different than attracting her friend or someone down the hall. Right? Women are going to vary a lot more than men when it comes to attractiveness. Couple notes on body image, and then I'll wrap up with 3 last keys. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I feel obligated to at least mention it every time I talk about attraction. Body image, as I said, is one of those cons when it comes to cultural, and really anytime we talk about attractiveness. There's always a concern that when we start to talk about what makes us attractive, that we don't feel like we can live up to it, and it starts to hurt our body image, which is simply our self-perceived basically, how well do you adhere to what is normal? So how much do I feel like I fit what is normal in my particular culture, what the standard is in my particular culture? And the problem with that is that there's all this research that suggests that negative body image is really bad for us. So if I feel like I don't live up to the cultural standard, again, I mentioned some of that research before. And the other problem is that most of our standards, that at least we have in our heads about cultural beauty, are only half-based in reality. Again, as I've been talking about, hopefully you've gotten a sense that there's a much more broad spectrum of what is attractive out there than just what is on TV and what is just in a magazine or what is just on a YouTube clip. There's a lot more that goes into what attracts us as human beings than just those things. And sometimes if we overemphasize that, we can have some of those negative effects. And so that's important. And I want to put this up because the first key I'm going to talk about is self-image. So I want you to keep the body image thing in mind as we talk about this. These are kind of the last 3 keys I want to wrap up with, and then we can have some questions about, okay, so what can you do with this information on top of all the things we already talked about? One of the first keys to being an attractive partner is this self-image. Again, I've said several times that it is important to be attractive to other people, and self-image is a part of this. And not just what I look like to other people, but again, my perception of myself matters. This process I have up on the slide is something we've seen replicated several times in several research studies. I kind of mentioned it earlier, that if I perceive myself as physically attractive, what happens is I think I'm a catch. I think I'm a good spouse. Someone's going to be lucky to end up with me. What does that actually do in the dating market? It makes those people flirt more with others. They're more likely to flirt, and guess what happens when you flirt more? You get flirted with more. In fact, that's the only real indicator we see in the research of if you want to be flirted with, what you do is you flirt more with other people. And really that's about, like I said, putting yourself in those situations. But having a good self-image drives that and motivates that for people. What that tells me is that if I don't have a good body image, if I don't have a good self-image of myself, that might be one of my barriers in the marriage market. It might be getting in my way because I don't feel good about myself. I don't feel like I'm a good mate. I don't feel like I'm a good spouse. And so it's pulling me out of situations and out of opportunities to engage with people and possibly start relationships. The nice thing is it's not that hard to fix this one, right? This is about improving your image, both your self-perception, right? And there's all sorts of self-help exercise out there. I'll talk a little bit about confidence at the end. But even finding a friend to help you, right? So if you're struggling, you know what, I just don't know how to do my hair, or I have a bad sense of style, right? Help a friend. Or find a friend, find a family member to do that. I know Amy knows some consultants that could probably help you with that, right? But that's important, right? That self-image is one of the keys to do this, that I feel good about myself, and that actually is going to have dividends and benefits in the dating market. Second key, tied to flirting. I have to be a good flirter. I haven't talked about flirting, but it's actually a key to attraction. Again, as you've kind of thought through this process we've talked about, if I put myself in situations where I can be attractive to other people, well, part of that is I have to be able to flirt. So when they find me attractive and they come over and talk to me and flirt, I have to be able to flirt back, right? There is an actual art to flirting, right? You've all experienced good flirters and bad flirters. Again, the nice thing is that, and it's easy for me being married for 16 years to say, it's not that hard to flirt. But I don't think it's that hard, right? We sometimes get in our heads that we have to say the perfect thing. We have to do the perfect thing. What I recommend is don't worry about the specifics. Understand the principles. And there's really just 3 keys to good flirting. One of those is being clear. In other words, good flirters make it clear that I'm flirting with you. There shouldn't be ambiguity about this. It should be clear that I like you, that I find you physically attractive, right? That should be part of good flirting. There's lots of ways you can do that, right? You can just come out and say, well, I find you really attractive, right? You can say that. It's okay to do that. But good flirting is clear. It's not ambiguous. It's not uncertain. It's also playful, right? And what that means is that it gets people smiling and engaged in the conversation, right? It's oftentimes humorous, right? If you guys think about what are the times when someone's flirted with me where I've enjoyed it the most, it's probably going to be tied to humor. It's going to be tied to something that was playful. It's not serious, right? It's not about pickup lines, right? Never use a pickup line, right? It doesn't work. And if it does, you don't want to be with that person, right? This isn't about showing your intelligence. It's not about coming up with the snappiest and wittiest thing you can say. It's about being fun. It's about being playful with the other person. Again, in a clear way that shows that I'm flirting. And then finally, it's context sensitive. It's understanding the situation that I'm at, and oftentimes even using the context of the situation or the activity we're in to do the flirting. In other words, this is about avoiding awkwardness, right? It's that if we're sitting in a play or the opera, I'm probably not going to be having this long, jokey conversation with you during this time, right? But if we're at a ward activity, if we're at some sort of mixer with friends, maybe I can do that. Right? If we're rock climbing, there's certain things I can do that are going to be playful and clear to you that I like you. If we're at a movie or playing a game, there's things I can do in the context of that board game we're playing that are specific and playful and show you that I like you. Right? That's all flirting is. It's just keeping these 3 things in mind and then doing them and being clear. Right? And again, that will increase that attractiveness that you have with other people. Okay, final key to this. Kind of a common theme that I've kind of referenced a couple times, but I want to end with, which is confidence. Confidence is something that helps every aspect of attraction that we've talked to. And it's interesting because confidence is attractive universally across the sexes. And this actually cuts across all the things we've talked about in terms of particularly cultural and personal preferences. But I haven't heard a lot of people that say, I'm not attracted to a confident person. Right? Those people that are really wishy-washy and have no confidence at all, I like those people. Right? Usually people that actually say that are abusive in relationships because they like power. Most of us are attracted to confidence, which means if I want to be attractive to other people, I have to have that confidence. Now, there is a fine line between confidence and arrogance. You've all seen people that are very arrogant, and you've all seen people that are confident but humble, right? And this is where I'll make my most explicit religious reference, is that Christ is a really good example of someone who is extremely confident but not arrogant. So if you want to know the difference, go back to your scriptures, go through the Book of Mormon, New Testament, and look at how Christ was confident without being arrogant, right? Because there's a difference. Arrogance is not a turn-on for most people, but confidence is. Confident people, just to give you a couple things, and again, if you want to kind of think about Christ here, I think it's a good illustration. Confident people are clear in their communication, right? And this isn't necessarily about specific communication skills, although that's important. They're just clear, right? When you talk to a confident person, they articulate what they want to say. They're clear about their opinions. They're not flustered. And that's important. I mean, if I want confidence, I have to be able to talk to the opposite sex in a clear and confident way. They also, and this is from the research, they tend to have different body posture than non-confident people and body language. Again, when you talk to someone, there's certain body and nonverbal cues that they give you that show you that they're confident. It actually has to do with kind of how big you make yourself versus small. So if you kind of get yourself small, that shows a lack of confidence, right? Straight body posture. Hand signals actually shows confidence instead of keeping your hands like this and shaking, right? Those things show confidence. Those are attractive to other people. And having clear goals and having what we call goal-motivated behavior is also a sign of confidence. People have clear life goals, whether it's in their education, their career, their hobbies. That is also a sign of confidence that is kind of universally attractive to a lot of people. Now, if this is such a big piece, let me talk just a little bit about, okay, well, how do I get that? right? Because this is another common thing for Latter-day Saint singles where they struggle with their confidence. I don't feel confident in the dating market. I don't feel like I can be attractive to other people. Well, what can you do to build confidence? 3 things that I think can help most people improve the confidence that they have, regardless of where they are, whether you feel really confident or not confident at all. First and foremost, we have to acknowledge your lack of control when it comes to attraction. I'm going to kind of make this specific to attraction. And what I mean by that is that I've shared with you a lot tonight about the biological and cultural and personal things that make you attractive to other people. A lot of those are beyond your control, that you can't change. Or if you can change them, they're going to change fairly slowly, right? So if I know that I probably need to be a little bit more healthy to attract the widest array of people, right? And it's January, so it's a good month for that, for setting goals for exercise. That's great. It's not going to happen overnight. It might take me months and months to kind of get in a more healthy place for me. Again, not the unrealistic expectation that media expects me to have, but just a healthier weight for me, or healthier eating habits, or healthier sleeping habits, whatever it is. That's going to make me more attractive, but I can't change them all at once. So first thing I have to do to be more confident is realize I can't control a lot of this. So I need to stop worrying about it. And then once I do that, what I can do is step 2, which is I redirect to the positives. Every single person has positive traits. I firmly believe that. That everyone in this room has things about you that make you attractive to other people, and things that are unique to you that make you even more attractive than most other people out there. I need to stop worrying about the things I can't control, find the things that make me attractive to those in my market, and then I can lead with those things. So as I start to focus on what is positive about me, maybe it's my humor, maybe it's my rock climbing ability, maybe it's my scripture mastery, right? Whatever it is, when I find those positives, I can lead with them in dating situations. I can emphasize them, particularly, as I said, if they are culturally attractive. If I can identify those things that I'm good at, that are culturally attractive in my unique culture, at least the culture that I care about, and emphasize those with what we call proactive behavior, which means I'm going to be actively bringing them up, right? Sometimes we hesitate about this in early dating situations. So I don't want to manipulate them. I want them to love me for who I am. Therefore, I need to tell them all the negative things about me early on to see if they want to stay or not, right? It's not a good tactic. You can do that later on and do more disclosure later on. But in early dating situations, it's okay and good to lead with the positives, right? Make yourself attractive to that person, because it's not just about you. Again, these are relationships of choice, and you might find someone that you're really attracted to, but if they're not attracted to you, you don't have a relationship with them. And so I need to make sure that I'm putting myself in the best possible situation to make you attracted to me based on these positives and promoting the positives in me. Again, letting go of those things that I can't control. Okay, last slide, and we'll open with some questions. As I mentioned, I do want to mention the kind of what I call the dark side of attractiveness, which is basically my biggest concern doing a seminar like this, that I hope no one walks away ended up in this camp, which is this choosy camp. That as you become, so my assumption is you're going to take this and all become very attractive people, right, and attract the opposite sex. But as you do that, like I said, the research suggests that that could backfire if you become what is called it's actually called choosy in the research. That's our academic term for this, is choosiness. Because as I mentioned before, the most attractive people are not the ones that get married. It's actually the average people that get married more likely, more often than not. The most attractive people are the actually least likely to get married in most markets, including Latter-day Saint singles. In fact, one of the most fascinating studies I've ever seen done with a colleague that's retired now, and he spent the last 10 years of his career at BYU in my school. He said, you know what? I'm going to do the study I've always wanted to do. He got permission down in Provo to go into a YSA stake, and he tracked every single young single adult in that stake for a year to see who dated who. He got all their Facebook profiles, who dated who talked to who ended up getting married, who ended up not getting married. And I can remember walking in and meeting with him one time. We were in another meeting, and he looked really depressed. And he said, I've just found the most depressing thing in my career right before I retired. He said, I've been looking through all this data, looking through everything that's happened in the stake, and we've found this phenomenon that's happening consistently throughout this year, which was the most attractive people in this stake, so the most physically and spiritually attractive people, never got married, but they were dating everyone else. And they were actually preventing a lot of marriages from other people, because what they would do is they would go on a different date every single weekend. And every other person, so if you want to put numbers on this, right, these are the 9s and 10s of the stake. The 5s, 6s, and 7s would date these people, and then they would wait. Because what they're thinking is, well, I got a date, and they're not married yet, so I still have a chance with that 9 or 10. So I'll just kind of hang out till they choose. Well, the 9 and 10s were looking around saying, I could date anyone in this stake, so I don't need to pick anyone. I'm going to wait for the perfect person to come around. And this is my research graphic here. Because what we know happens, if I wait for the perfect person, I never get married. And so actually what he told me in this meeting, he said, I think we could do one thing that would fix the single market in the church. We need to go find all the 9s and 10s, put them on an island by themselves, and then everyone else will be okay. They were kind of messing everything up because of this idea of choosiness. Like I said, what happens is you find yourself more attractive. What can happen is you're going to start getting attention, which is a good thing, but then you start to think, hey, I can be really selective now, right? I'm getting more dates, I'm being more attractive to people, I can be really selective, and now I start getting this grass is greener mentality. Everyone I date is not quite good enough, because what if the next best person, what if that person's a 7, what if the 7.5 shows up? And then what if the 8 shows up? What if the 8.2 shows up next? And there's this delay and delay and delay, not realizing that that 7 might have made you more happy than anyone else you could have dated, even the 8, 9, and 10 when it comes to attraction. Remember, back to that earlier slide about long-term relationships, by the end of your life, the only thing that's going to matter is the inward attraction that's based on you changing to being attracted to whoever that partner is. Right? There is something to President Kimball's idea of just go marry a good Latter-day Saint. Right? He didn't know the social science research behind that, but there's research that says eventually you'll be really attracted to each other if you stick things out. Right? So understanding that, and that as I become more attractive in the dating market, not letting this choosiness and over-selectivity hinder my ability to progress things in the relationship. All right, thank you. That's all I've got. So, open it up for questions. I think, how long for questions, Amy?
We'll just see how it goes.
Okay.
We have like 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
If they have questions.
And I'll stick around afterwards if people want to ask me more personal questions. Yeah.
So my question is for like the last thing you just talked about. So how do you tell if you are dating someone that is like that, that's too choosy, and you, like how do you know if it's ever going to progress?
Repeat the question for
Yes. So the question was, how do you know if you're dating someone who fits this kind of highly choosy, selective mentality? The biggest indicator you're going to see is someone that goes on a lot of first and second dates and not a lot of committed relationships. And so if you've got someone that would say, I haven't really done a lot of long-term relationships, but I date a lot, that's usually a pretty good indicator of someone like that. And obviously you can kind of see, okay, it's an attractive person, right? It's oftentimes in LDS single market, it's the person you look at and you're like, why are you not married, right? But they date all the time, but they never quite get to that. So if you've got someone that doesn't quite get to that committed dating phase, that's usually a pretty good indicator. Other questions? Yes?
There's a lot of discussion about how people communicate differently. Like some people are very visual, some are very feely, like that. And that's it's really important to connect with them that way.
Yeah.
How do you feel like communication that way? Is that really effective? Of like how personal? Is that you need to know that right then, or can you kind of just assume everything?
Right. Yeah, so that's a slightly different topic, because so the question is how does different types of communicating in terms of feeling a connection to people based on different ways you talk to each other, how does that matter? How do you figure that out? So there's actually 2 different areas of the research. We've been talking about attraction, and that question kind of gets into what we call feelings of love. right? Is how do I feel love from another person? So the first thing I thought of when you were asking your question was probably the most common theory out there when it comes to these type of issues is Chapman's love languages. A lot of you probably heard of Chapman. Is that kind of what you're thinking? So that is kind of related to attraction, but it's different. So in other words, Chapman's love languages are about how you feel loved by another person. It's not necessarily if I'm attracted to you, it's if I feel, it's more of an emotional response. We've been kind of talking more about actually a physiological cognitive thing. Chapman's more about an emotional connection. He talks about things like love languages in terms of physical touch. I can feel loved by physical touch. I can feel love by phrases, so saying you love me, gift giving, right? He has 5 different love languages. So that is important. And it's added on to what we're talking about. So in other words, it's an added important element that needs to go on top of attraction. That on top of me being attracted to you and you being attracted to me, one of the other things we have to figure out is, number one, am I in love? Which Chapman doesn't really talk about. There's another guy out there by the name of Sternberg who has what's called a triangular theory of love that talks about if you know you're in love with someone. And then Chapman talks about how you express love within relationships. And it's important. I actually really like Chapman's stuff. He started as an academic and then realized he could make a lot more money writing books. And so that's what he did. But there is some kind of grounded research behind what he does, that it's important that if I feel love, if I'm in love with a person, I have to figure out how to make that partner feel that. Right? And so if I'm dating someone or married to someone that's a physical touch person, I might be in acts of service, which means I feel love when you serve me. But if I just try to do the dishes for you and I try to do all these things, but you're a physical touch person, you're going to say, I don't feel like you love me. I don't feel it. So we need to learn to, that's what Chapman's big thing is, learning how to communicate with each other. So like I said, that's important, and it's in addition to what we've talked about. Yeah?
In the LDS community, where's the best place to meet people statistically?
Okay, so the question is, in the LDS market, where is the best place to meet people statistically? You're not going to like the answer. It's your ward. The church has put a lot of time and energy into trying to put men and women that are single together. And I think for the most part they have. They're struggling a lot. Do you want to add?
I'm in a family ward.
Yes.
It's tricky.
Yes, it is. And they are actually creating, I don't think they've done this in Utah, the mid-singles wards. They started, okay, sorry, I'm out of this area. But I know my sister-in-law is in her 30s and single in Arizona, and they just, actually it's Sunday, started a mid-singles ward there too. So the church is aware that if I'm in a family ward, there's not a lot of options, right? We have the single adult activities, the mid-single activities, that they are starting to create wards that will basically emulate the young single adult wards in the mid-singles area. Now, beyond that, what I would say is that the second best place to be is not work and not gym. That's what a lot of people think. It's actually just out in public, in places that are going to be attracting people that have similar likes. So in other words, if I'm really artistic, art festivals, music festivals, farmers markets, right? Where are there places that I can go where I can interact with a lot of people, and there are a lot of people, right? So not movie theaters, right? But even like malls, perhaps, right? So if I can find places where there's a lot of people that line up with interests that I have, that's usually outside of religious communities, because the research suggests religious communities is number one, and then it's actually bars is number two. That doesn't work very well in Latter-day Saint singles. So, but the idea of why bars are is because it's these things. It's a lot of people that have similar values, right? So if you kind of take that mentality and think about what that would be for me, that's what it would be.
Go back to college.
Yeah. Well, and it is. I mean, that's why for a lot of people, college is a really good opportunity to get married, is because of these things. A lot of people, similar interests. Other questions? Yeah.
About online dating.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a good thing?
Yes and no. So here's the yes part of it. If you go back to that filter theory, the good thing that online dating has done is it's opened up that propinquity, right? It's given me access to a lot of people, which helps. Because a lot of people don't have time to go kind of stalk the community and find all of these people, right? So online dating gives me access to this pool of people that are looking for relationships that, and I can even filter based on values and things. That's all really good. And the research suggests that actually a lot of people are using that as an avenue for marriage. Now, the con piece is that most online dating sites are setting people up for failure. And what I mean by that is that what we know in the research is that trying to date with a shopping list mentality doesn't line up well with long-term relationship success. When I try to pick my spouse based on this laundry list of, okay, so think about most online dating, right? You log on, you maybe take their matching thing, and they give you this list, but what do you tend to do pretty quick? You go start searching, right? You start going through the pictures, and you pick someone, and then you read their profile. What that does, if you think about in our discussion today about attraction, it makes the attraction piece very one-sided and oftentimes very superficial. And so I'm focusing more on physical attraction, or at least what they're portraying to me. And oftentimes, so the problem is that when we actually start to connect, I've built up this perfect image of who you are that you can't possibly live up to. And so interestingly enough, so LDS singles, I'm assuming you guys are all familiar with that. So the Compass matching thing that they did, so I designed that. And when I was designing that for them, I tried to get them to do something really radical, which I said, what I want you to do is match people on that, but don't let them see pictures. The first thing you do is say, hey, you were matched with John. Let's put you in a chat room and have you just talk for a little bit and get to know each other. And it wouldn't be after like the second or third interaction that you would reveal their picture, right? Kind of like this prize for getting that far. Now I can actually see what that person, they didn't go for it. But that's the potential thing. And it's a con in the sense that if you're aware of it, you can oftentimes mitigate the problem. So if I'm just aware that I don't want to go into online dating looking for that perfect person, you're usually going to be okay. And then you get the benefit, like I said, of having access to a lot of people, which is a good thing. Other questions? Okay. Turn over to Amy for a couple minutes. Okay.
So I am just thrilled at the stuff that Brian shared with us. Dr. Willoughby is brilliant, and he's actually assisted us a lot in developing our curriculum as well as training our coaches at the LDS Matchmaker. And so I designed the seminar series that we have, that we're putting on. He kicked it off. Oh, am I putting a... Hello? Is that on? So around a lot of the research that Brian has shared with us, so you got to hear tonight, the first one, and if you wanted to check out on our website, it has more information. I'm just going to go through a little bit more. I'm pushing the space bar, but it's not going to the next slide. So next week, Brian is actually speaking on LDS dating myths debunked. So we hope that you'll think about joining us for that. And so he's going to talk more about some of the LDS cultural narratives that can contribute to some of the dating challenges out there. And so that's at 7 p.m. as well here. And then the next week, it will be me. And I loved the question that someone asked about what's the best way to meet someone, because there's really no one best way. And we could debate all night the pros and cons of all the different ways and make great arguments for each of them. But in my experience, it's a really good idea, if you're interested in finding the right person for you, is to not say no to any of them. I get clients in my office all the time that are like, I don't do online dating, or I don't do singles words. And I feel really sad for them, because when I was single, I did all of those things, and I dated from all of those things. And so I would hate for you to miss out on the opportunities that could come. And so I'm going to talk about all the different ways to meet great people. So I hope that you'll consider joining us for that one. And then The January 29th is Alicia Richmond. She's been on a lot of interesting, back up. So she was the stylist on Studio 5 for a while. She's actually traveling the world right now and was able to squeeze us in, but she's going to talk about a lot of the stuff that Brian mentioned with personal image and developing your own personal image. So it's not about changing yourself, it's about bringing out the best version of you and connecting with the opposite sex, the kind of person that you want to be with. And so she's going to talk about those things. And then Allison Mangrum, she's fabulous. She's kind of one of those best kept secrets that when I started this business, I was really scared to leave my corporate job and to do this crazy thing. And we all have fears about different things. And so the stuff that she's going to teach isn't just applicable to dating and relationships, it's about life. And she's an incredible speaker. She's an incredible person who has so much to share. And the stuff that she's going to cover is really about overcoming our past hurts and moving forward in life and being able to use that to be able to develop emotional intimacy, which is so huge in relationships. I meet with people all the time that are struggling to feel emotional connections, and she is so great with helping with that subject. So that's why I invited her. She's kind of an outdoorsy girl, and she didn't actually have a great professional photo, so I snagged one on Facebook. She's always out climbing like Mount Kilimanjaro or whatever, so she's amazing. And then this is kind of an interesting one. This comes up a lot in the work that we do at the LDS Matchmaker. I always get women that come in. It doesn't matter what their age. If they haven't had children, they want to. And I have a personal story that I'm not going to go huge into, but this doctor is one of the top fertility doctors out there, and he is responsible for me having my twin boys at the age of 44. And they are perfect and amazing. Women want to have kids. We're in a family-oriented church, and men are highly uneducated about the options out there. And while they may prefer younger women, in many cases, there are a lot of options. So I decided to do this seminar just to educate people. And you never know. Like, it might just open up some doors. And so he's a really interesting, great guy. He's LDS, and so he's coming to speak. And then we're actually doing a bonus seminar that we added, because it was a six-week seminar series, but then we did tonight free. And so those who had already paid, I wanted to add a seminar. And so the people that have already paid that are part of the seminar series are going to have an opportunity to give input on what this seminar is. So we haven't actually decided yet. But we're going to take a break in between on February 19th, I think, is President's Day weekend, so we're not going to have one that week. So if you're interested in being part of the future seminars, there's two options. The basic package is $197, so all the seminars, either in person or you can watch them on it won't be a Facebook Live, but it'll be a private broadcast. And you'll also have the seminars to watch later. We also have a premier package that will include the seminars, but also a one-on-one dating strategy session to create your own plan with one of our coaches at the LDS Matchmaker, and a personalized image consult with one of our image coaches, as well as a mini photo session. We'll be doing that on February 10th with one of our photographers. And we will have one of our professional writers write your online profile, because I am actually an online dating success story and I totally believe in it. So we do that all the time for our clients. We actually do online dating for them because most people hate it. So we do matchmaking as well, but we don't want to rely on any one source. So that's how we do that, is we create an awesome profile. And we get emails all the time from online people that don't know, like, we're helping our clients, and they're like, wow, this is the best profile I've ever seen. You really shared who you are, and I really want to get to know you. So we're like, yeah, it's a great profile. And then as a gift to all of you who are participating and those even watching live, we're going to give you an opportunity to take the Ready assessment, who Dr. Willoughby helped create. And so if you email us at info@ldsmatchmaker.org, we'll send you that link. Do you want to talk about that, Brian?
Yeah.
Just tell them what that's about.
So the Ready assessment, so the Relate Institute is been housed at BYU since the 70s, actually, and it's a group of us in the school, that all of us that are interested in relationships and healthy marriage. One of the things we've done with our research is create the Relate Institute, which was designed to help real people. Since none of you actually read my research articles or anyone else in the school, we wanted to find a way to actually take the research to real people. So we created 2 relationship assessment tools. One's called Relate, which is for people in a relationship, and the other is called Ready, which is a survey that you take, and then it generates a report for you that will basically tell you, based on the science that we know about what makes people successful, it'll give you different scores and different graphs you can look at. It'll give you kind of an insight into how ready are you for a long-term committed relationship. And so it'll give you some thoughts on your family background, your personal preferences, things like that. And it'll give you a report that will talk about kind of where your strengths are and where some of the things maybe you could work on are as you're going through the dating market.
Great, thanks. And since we're in a new year, a new you, it'll give you some ideas on where you might want to set goals to get into that long-term relationship. So with that said, why don't we end? And I want to thank Scott Porter. He's in there slaving away to get your churros hot and ready. And San Diablo Artisan Churros has sponsored our refreshments tonight, so we want to thank them. And they are, I don't know where they're located, but you can Google them. I know Scott wants to come out and tell us about the churros. Scott?
Hi.
Hey. Come on over.
How's it going?
What do you want to tell us about the churros?
So you guys have had churros before, yeah? Have you had filled churros?
Yes.
You have? Good. Disneyland had filled churros?
Oh, not
Filled churros. This is the
Filled,
magic.
like they have
This is the
stuff in
magic.
them.
Yeah, so we make our churros fresh from scratch, then we fill them with happiness, really. Dulce de leche, Nutella, sweet cream, and then we also do some seasonal flavors, but we do special events and catering. So weddings, parties, corporate events.
Nice.
And tonight we have our, you can have as many churros as you want. That's what we do. So our churros are little guys, so they're mini churros, and you can have as many as you'd like. So
What
come
kind?
by. We have dulce de leche, Nutella, and sweet cream. And we do have a secret menu. I'll let you guys in on it. We have Diablo style, which is spicy cinnamon sugar on the outside. So a little bit of cayenne with the cinnamon sugar. We also have Inferno style, if you really want to get serious.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Well, thanks
Thank you.
so much
Yeah,
for coming,
it's great to be
Scott.
here.
And if you want to join our seminar series, my staff, why don't you all stand up? I mean, you probably met them. Marin's here. We've got Mariella, Ethan, Alyssa, and Sandra. They can get you signed up, or you can go to our website. Thanks, everyone. And, oh, Derek Seal. He's the man behind all this magic.